Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Auction for the Soul. This week's Perashat Vayikra. We are starting the third book of the five Chumshei Torah, the five books of the Torah, the five books of Moses. The book of Vayikra is also known as Leviticus. It comes from the word Levi, Levi, because so much of this Parshat and the book itself has to do with the Levites and the Kohanim, the priestly class of people that were involved in engaging the different types of offerings that were offered at the temple service. Now, just be mindful that the temple service has stopped for almost over 2,000 years now. There's been no services happening. And even with the previous temple, the second temple definitely was not an expression of the temple that God had intended. It was more of a physical carcass of what the original temple was, a place where man and God met, where you had this fire coming from above to below, a spiritual awakening that happened daily for 400 years, completely lost after the destruction of the first temple. The second temple was more of an attempt to reconstruct what we had at the first, but it never really reached that high level. So Parshat begins with Vayikra el Moshe, and God called to, it doesn't say who, it just says Vayikra, and he called to Moshe. V'yidaber Hashem elav me'ohel moed le'mor. God spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, okay, strange. Remember, we're going to ask the questions over here. It says, Vayikra el Moshe. Now, if you had a Chumash open right now, you notice that the first letter of Vayikra is the letter Aleph is small. It's a small little letter Aleph. And the question is why, when there's a font change, or if there is unnecessary words, like up until now, every single time God has reached out to Moshe, it says very clearly, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe le'mor, and God spoke to Moses saying these things. But over here, Vayikra el Moshe, he calls out to Moshe. Now, if we're going with the chronological order, this is happening after the Jewish people, these laws are happening after the Jewish people received the second set of tablets. Moses got the Jews forgiveness, the tabernacle is being constructed, the Mishkan is up, it's running, and now how do we actually use it to function? The idea of bringing korbanot. V'daber el bnei Israel v'amarta alehem Adam ki yakriv mikem korban laHashem. One of you, when an individual wants to bring a korban, an offering before God, min ha'behema or min ha'bakar or min ha'tzon takrivu et korbanchem. You're going to bring a sacrifice to God, whether it's an animal, whether it's cattle, or whether it is a livestock. You shall bring it, the offering like this, and it goes through what the offerings are. Now, let's go through Rashi for a moment over here. I got my reading glasses on, and let's do this. So Rashi says as follows. It says, Vayikra Moshe, l'kol dibrot, l'kol amirot, l'kol tzivuyim, kadma kriya. Any single time there was any kind of commandment, there was always a kriya, there was always a call. And this call, Vayikra loshon chiba. You see that God is using this very endearing language. Lashon shemalache hasharet, Mishtamshim bo. This is the same language that the great angels use between one another. Yikra ze el ze, right? We say Yikra ze el ze, kadosh, 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 kadosh. Same idea. This is the language that the angels use with one another when they're approaching God. Aval nevi'eh umot haolam, when it comes to the other nations of the other prophets that existed, nigla alehem below arai. God came to them in a haphazard kind of way. It just happened suddenly. There was no invitation. There was no kri'ah. There was no calling out to. Right? Shneimar v'yikar alehem el bil'am. And God appeared to before Bilam in a happenstance kind of way. And now this is the Vayikra. So Rashi is answering the question, why is the Aleph small? He's saying simply it's small because, understand that the word Vayikar, when you remove the Aleph, it seems like it's happenstance. And therefore Rashi later is going to tell you that Moses in his humility said, you know what, it's too much, God. Like, you're going to call out to me, I'm nothing but a mere mortal, I'm nothing but a human. Make it seem like it is like everybody else. I don't want this special invitation. And Hashem said, no. There's a negotiation that goes back and forth, and ultimately God prevails and says, you're going to put in a small Aleph. Now, I want to share something else over here with you. It says over here, Rashi continues, it says, Hakol holech umagia le'oznav le'kol Yisrael v'lo shom'in. Rashi's saying something different over here. He's saying that Vayikra el Moshe, really, God is calling out to all of us. And the only difference between us and Moshe is that he's actually listening. There is a call going out every single day to God, from God, calling our names. And most of us are not really tied into the frequency. We're not listening. We're not hearing the call itself. Now, I mentioned this in my drasha for Pesach, that you look at the hostages that came out, the stories they're telling, it's just is worth repeating, all of them coming out and saying how in the dungeons and the dark places of Gaza, the first thing that they all talk about is how they had this communication with God. They heard God speaking to them. They had this profound awakening. Atheists, Jews who were disconnected spiritually, come out with a very deep sense of understanding of spirituality. And I like to think of it in these terms. Moshe is being called and summoned. All of us are being summoned, but we're just so distracted by the cacophony of sound, the distraction of life, pursuit of business, making families, caring for our loved ones. We're so busy, we're so distracted that we don't even hear the call. Moses was always tuned in. And you see this, by the way, when he was at the burning bush. You think that was just random? He saw the bush was burning. Everyone who passed by could have seen it. But the difference is that Moses is so humble that he's looking to figure out a way of how he can find this truth. Moses' humility is what leads him to God. And more than that, we also know that Moses had all kinds of different names. He has 10 different names, but yet God calls out to him in this name, Moshe. Moshe Mishisiyu Min Hamayim. God, Moshe is called the one that was drawn out of the water. What a weird name, right? The water drawer, the one that Batya, the princess of Egypt, a non-Jewish woman, calls Moses the greatest rabbi, the greatest prophet that ever lived. That's the name that God is using. Why? And some of our rabbis will tell you that the reason for this is because in the same way that Batya, that's Pharaoh's daughter's name, she sacrificed so much to bring Moses into her house and to raise him. And some would even say that the sacrifice that actually happened also by Amram and Yocheved, by allowing themselves to have a child, right? That they themselves were in a situation where they were able to sacrifice, and that Moses' whole existence and being was predicated on this idea of sacrifice, right? He recognized that you have to humble yourself to be able to give to others. He sees someone in need, he goes and he fights for them. He sees the daughters of Yitro unable to go ahead and draw the water, he fights for them. He's constantly looking. And if we're someone that does not have our ego blinding us and thinking that it's all about me, you could actually see that there are opportunities that are always opening up for us to go ahead and help other people. It's constantly there. God is always calling out. We could have used other names. Moshe has so many cool names. Yekutiel, he has the name of Netanel, he has the name of Abba Socha, Avi Socha, the father of all the seers. That's the coolest name ever, right? The father of all the seers. But yet, God chooses Moses' most simple name because God is not looking for the most big people. He's not looking for the guys that have the strongest amount of energy, the highest IQs, and the most capable. He's looking for the simple people that are humble enough to open themselves up to the possibility of seeing God in their lives. And that that drives us to a call to action. Now, why is it that the korbanot are in this week's parsha? Right? Why is the sacrificial system such a big part of the Torah itself? We haven't done sacrifices in so long. Why are we learning this lesson of humility in the beginning of the parsha that starts Leviticus? Leviticus and its ideas take up 1/3 of the Torah verses, the idea of sacrifice. So much is happening over here. And there are different approaches to understanding this. One is by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch, who try to get a more symbolic understanding of what is happening over here. And he says, look at the next verse, right? God is calling out to all of us, and God speaks to him, right? Daber el bnei Israel, the next verse says, speak to the Jewish people of Martelahem, Adam ki yakriv michem, a man that wants to come close from among you. That word mikem, you don't need it there. But that means if someone is willing to give of himself and wants to sacrifice to God from the behemah, which represents the animal soul, nefesh behemit, Umin habakar, the one that's able to create boundaries. Boker means breaking boundaries. Bakar. Or min hatson, the people that are able to break out of the social pressures of reality, the conforming to the community, the being able to break out and become above. People that are interested in true holiness. People that are able to think beyond themselves, right? You're the people, takrivu, you're the people that I want you to come close. The whole process of bringing these offerings was really a process of meditation. I'm bringing these things because I'm trying to figure out how I can develop a deeper relationship with God. I want to figure out how I can elevate the self. And I'll end with this idea. This will be a little shorter today. I think it's important. The concept of sacrifice has to do with, well, my personal wants and desires. Am I willing to sacrifice those things because I have a higher calling? God's greatest gift to us is the ability of choosing to be the best version of ourselves, choosing to express our identity in a way that is somehow expresses godliness in this world. We call it Kiddush Hashem, bringing a level of holiness to God's name through our actions. How do I do that? By recognizing that the choices that I make may not often be an expression of what I truly want, but an expression of what is truly right, what is true. We live in a world where all too often people are just making choices based on their emotions and their wants, never about the sacrifice for the greater good. Perashat Vayikra is about humbling ourselves so that we can hear God's call. And in the process of doing so, we elevate ourselves and to become something more, a conduit for the infinite in this world. I believe that's what the Parsha is about. I hope that you're able to humble yourselves and tune in a little bit, because God, I think in our generation, He's calling out for all of us. He's screaming. Where are you? Are you willing to step up and step in and do what you need to do to be the best version of you? Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom Baruch. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.